Hey, Nick here, just for a brief moment. First of all, thank you for listening to this podcast, whether you're starting here or from the beginning. It's a new venture, they're always a little on the scary side, and I appreciate you giving it a chance. Second thing, expect a slight shift in tone from the prior episodes. At some point I realized that trying to tell a traditional hero story wasn't quite working. But trying to tell an interesting history and tangents was, so that's going to be the new norm. Not to worry, if you like the super stories with the corporate hellscape twist, those will still be continuing as your own short stories, available exclusively on my Patreon. By the way, did you know I have a Patreon at patreon.com/mortoninsurance? Because I do. And I'll be expanding the rewards to include short stories at the $5 range and fully voiced recordings of those short stories at the $10 range. Money tight? Hey, I understand. And I don't want those short stories to be only accessible on Patreon. So each short story will be released on this podcast channel after a 3-month or so delay. That may be up for change in the future, but that's what I'm planning on for now. Third and final thing, I want to point out that this is a one-person show. I am the writer, editor, voice, and producer of this podcast, and I am not terribly experienced at any of those things. Since I am doing this on the side while working full-time, don't expect me to be particularly willing to promise a specific release schedule on episodes or short stories. I'm sorry, but that's the reality of the situation until I can be assured that this will pay the occasional bills. That's all I've got. Now enjoy.
Good evening, listeners. They say... hold on. No, that's definitely not the one I'm looking for. Ooh, no, not that one. That's no. This is Super Claims. Well, listeners, I've got some bad news. It would seem that we at Morton Insurance, it's your insurance, have not found any suitable cases to discuss this week. Believe me, we have been searching high and low for cases that are both interesting enough and approved to be read for you. But we've got nothing. So, did you catch that Beavers game last night? Not the Super League game. Nobody watches them anyways. The Pro League team. Legendary pitcher Ray Leo. What an arm he's got. He's the only pitcher in the Pro League that can throw a ball straight without relying on kinetic manipulation, as far as I'm concerned. You know, that might be a good angle for today. I mean, we do have a sponsored team in the Baseball Super League, the Philadelphia Chicken Hawks. All I'm allowed to say about them as a Morton Insurance representative is that they're definitely a team, and I'm sure they're trying their hardest despite, everything. Yeah, let's dig into the world of sports, the different leagues, and a few notable players. So I'll assume, listener, that you're just not a sports person. Hey, I get it. Not all of us have seen the light yet. Well, in the North American scene, every team has 3 professional divisions: the Super League, Pro League, and Competitive League. The primary difference between these 3 leagues is the amount of superpowered individuals allowed on a team, and the legality of their respective powers. The Super League allows any and all superpowered individuals, but only 1 Esper on each team. Espers are players with psychic potential who typically will handle a critical role. Pitchers, quarterbacks, goalies, and so on are the explicit domain of Espers on any team worth their salt. Often the limitations of Espers means that the types of Espers on any given team are limited. Most contracts go to telekinetic or telepathic players, physical and mental manipulators. Though occasionally you get an oddball pyrokinetic or a fire-focused psychic who can cause some chaos. Some folks try to tell me that the Super League is the most exciting since it has big numbers and very flashy plays, but where's the heart? Every team's cut the same lineup half the time, and the ones that try something new just get rolled over every time. It's just not for me. Now, if you want a proper league, I would start with the Pro League. Unlike the Super League, the Pro League restricts players to the C and lower classes, and they're allowed 2 Espers per team, 1 veteran and 1 rookie. It's a league of Cinderella stories, clever use of powers, and some slight abuse of the rookie system to recruit unranked espers before the mandatory promotion to the Super League. But if it means the occasional esper goes under the radar, and perhaps some slightly imbalanced teams, then so be it. You can keep your statistics. I prefer the magic. Finally, there's the competitive league. With a focus on the essentials of the sport, superpowered individuals are outright banned from this league. True to its name, this is a league where the skill of individual players truly shines. And it has perhaps the most distinct personalities of all three leagues. Not that scores in this league go past double digits, let alone the standard triple digits of super leagues. It's a fine league, across the various sports it covers. Now, the rules of these leagues apply somewhat globally, but there are nuances for each sport. In baseball, for example, the only esper allowed on the team is always the pitcher position. In the Pro League, the second esper is the backup pitcher. Like old Michaela Erstwire. Heck of a player she was. Born in Indianapolis before the interstate incidents, she was one of the finest espers on the scene, even in her rookie year. Erstwire's angle was getting in people's heads and throwing the perfect mix-up. Seeing her trip everyone from Randall fans to the BatBot MK4A, easily the finest batter Mike Jones has ever invented, was like poetry in motion. Earned the team an investigation by the Pro League administration to see if they were running two non-rookie espers. That's a compliment if I've ever heard one. Shame she ended up graduating to the SSPI a few years later. I still think she could have won them a few more World Series Cups. Well, it wasn't her fault that New Delhi Nabi ran a counter-esper from the bench. Not that it always comes down to espers, mind you. Admittedly, yes, they have a type of power that innately dominates the field of play. And yes, it tends to become a game of whose espers are better when push comes to shove. But you've still got other people on the team. Take Downtown Joe, for example, soccer player for the New Rockround Virals. One of the premier teams in 1997 when independent cities were finally allowed to join the leagues, the secret to their success was their goalie. Downtown Joe had above-average strength and good game sense, but what made him truly special was something that couldn't be tested for: the ability to disable parts of his brain in short bursts. He was the perfect anti-esper. Nobody could read him when he'd punt the ball back, and with his strength, his returns were like a freight train. Unheard of with any esper goalie. Hence the nickname. He had freakishly good reflexes when he was in his zone too. Shame about the stroke in his fifth year. Fred Silas is another example of a star player who could handle espers. Before he retired to the SSPI, he was point guard on the Colorado Drift back in the 80s. The way that man could move a ball. And thanks to his ability to read how any object will ricochet, he always knew when an esper would interfere with a pass or shot. The jury's still out on whether he counted as an esper or not. I still think he destroyed the team when he retired in his prime. I know, it's stupid, but sometimes you hold a grudge. Let's recap for a moment. There are three leagues: the competitive, pro, and super. But only one matters. No espers or powers, above maybe cosmetic powers, and even then those get heavily scrutinized in the competitive league, 2 espers in the pro league, and 1 esper in the super league. These rules apply across the spectrum of sports, mostly, except for the Olympics. So as you likely know, the Olympics date back to ancient Greece, but the first modern Olympics took place in Athens in 1896. Given that this was before powers were really known about, and possibly before they even manifested in society, this has been considered the only truly fair Olympic event. For a while, it was just a free-for-all. Bring your nation's athletes, let them compete in the marketplace of athletics. Laissez-faire, as the French say. By the mid-20s, it had become clear that this would not work. Some countries believed that bringing superpowered individuals was outright cheating and refused on moral grounds. Others, with suitably large populations, were able to field relevant super beings for every event. And some countries outright protested the Olympics, claiming that they only served to add fuel to the flames of dangerous eugenics discussions. The last group would be proven correct beyond a doubt in the 1940s. Let's return to the 20s for a moment, though. The gentlemen had risen in prominence, and heroes had captured the nation's heart, so it seemed natural to formally ask the gentleman to perform as one of America's athletes in the Summer Olympics of 1924. He accepted this offer, and proceeded to make a mockery of the Summer Olympics Games. Within the first 5 events, the gentleman displayed his unnatural strength, speed, technique, and endurance in every single Olympic game, winning every gold medal. Papers at the time were divided between declaring these Olympics a mockery of the event or as the first real Olympics due to the domination of America. Papers also began redubbing the gentleman as the Patriot, which...
What's that? Oh, you want me to give the... All right.
It has been brought to my attention that Morton Insurance must make a brief mandatory statement. The gentleman, the patriot, the investor, and the butcher have no relation in any way, shape, or form at any time in history to the patriot, current CEO, owner, and founder of Morton Insurance. Any attempt to imply said relationship will be met with swift legal action in a court of law. I have decided, of my own accord, to switch topics away from the Olympics. It's a bit of a shame, though. It gets pretty interesting when Germany brought in their own athlete in the 30s. Der So, let's talk about the Super League. It's guaranteed to put a smile on your face, just like our own Philadelphia Chicken Hawks. Woo! Go Hawks! But typically, the draw of the Super League is its unique structure for all sports under that umbrella. See, unlike the competitive or pro leagues, matches end either by point differential or the standard time. Each sport has a different threshold, but it's common enough to see mismatched teams that it's a necessary precaution. Now, the Super League is also known for its royal family of teams. The 6 or so teams across each sport that are near guaranteed finalists in every season. Look, early victories and reputation snowballed into the teams attracting top talents without fail, and since then their dominance has rarely ever been challenged. There are some Cinderella stories that come out of the league, yes, but these always end up on the backs of players who, surprise, surprise, end up on a royal team the very next year. Now, here's where my problems really start, though. It's not just the same 6 teams that dominate the league, it's the same 8 espers that dominate the field. You can almost ignore every other player on the team when the Super League espers get their way. For example, Susan Sizestar Fielding is the agreed-upon top name in Super League, an expert telekinetic and telepath with the ability to see up to 30 seconds into the future. She has single-handedly put her team in the top 4 every season. Let's just cut to the quick here, though. Super League is a league of royal teams, regardless of sport, and there are 3 teams that nobody likes. The San Francisco Royals, the Texas Valley, and the New England Patriots. Fun fact about the Royals, they changed their name when the term royal teams started being used. They used to be the Woodchucks. Super League gets my blood boiling. Let's hop to the opposite end of that spectrum, the competitive league. It's best to think of the competitive league as the rules-oriented one of the 3, with a heavy focus on enforcing their rules, clean play, and tactics. Look, I know what people like to say about the competitive league, and they're rarely ever wrong. Is it a slower-paced league? Yes. Does it feel underwhelming after the blistering pace of Super League or the skillful grace of Pro League? I suppose. Nobody can say it's less competitive, though. I'd actually argue that the competitive league has the closest pool of teams across the leagues. It's rare to see a team win more than one season in the competitive league. The lack of espers and low ceiling on powers helps make sure no player dominates the field. Not that it ever stopped Jimmy Carles. Heck of an arm on that guy. I guess the worst and truest thing you can say about the competitive league is that it's the slowest of the lot. It's a great place to start for learning the essentials, and I still say they have the best bowling of all the leagues. Surprisingly enough, though, it's not the safest or most insurable of the leagues. They actually have a higher than average rate of injury, in part thanks to the lack of funding they get for their protective gear and the one-size-fits-all approach most teams go with. That's part of why Morton Insurance's own team, Go Chicken Hawks, competes in the Super League. It's the least injury-prone of the leagues. That seems like a good way to tie this into our company. The nature of legislation and insurance in the sporting world is interesting due to the social history of the various leagues. Villains are actually some of the biggest sports fans around, regardless of league, and as their one chance to compete against heroes of the SSPI, they take any damage to sports stones very seriously. It's actually made most of the various sporting goods stores and services our favorite clients. Villains and heroes alike are quick to own up to mistakes or damages to those buildings. Half the time they offer to pay out of their own pocket with a public apology. Though the few times that a villain doesn't respect the cultural norm of leaving sports centers alone tend to be a bit of a problem. They have some of the highest payouts in the insurance world, thanks to how low risk they tend to be, and any damages suffered tend to come with a thorough investigation of which part of their sophisticated security crews and technology failed. That and villains who knowingly target live sporting events tend to be pursued with extreme malice, often forced into solitary confinement while serving jail time for their own safety. People really love their sports. Speaking of loving sports, let's talk about the Pro League. The perfect middle ground of competition and individual performance, this league has everything. Breakout players, clever use of powers, a competitive league, and most importantly, team rivalries. The last 4 years have seen an insane rivalry between the Jamestown Rebels and Florida Men, regardless of the sport. Spit and Russell has had legendary duels from the pitcher's mound with Stormy Sue every single time they've been against each other. And I don't care what your favorite league is, you absolutely know what the final score was in the 2014 Pro League American Football Super Bowl. There's a reason why Pro League turns out so many new heroes to the SSPI, and why they almost without fail go on to have long, rewarding careers. It's a scrappy league. Everyone has a chance to prove themselves. I often think of it as a training grounds for new heroes, a place to master your powers and hone them in a practical setting. Speaking of, from Morden's perspective, the best sport for this is definitely soccer. Endurance, power, coordination, it offers up a perfect snapshot of any up-and-coming hero to recruit. Plus, soccer, statistically speaking, has the least American riots and fewest career-ending injuries, which makes it ideal. Myself, I'm a baseball kind of guy. There's a certain romance to the intense duel and dance of pitcher versus batter. Plus, it's one of the few sports that being a prominent Esper doesn't skew the game. So, that's our stance on the world of sports. They're beloved the nation over, bring villains and heroes together in terms of passion, and they're perhaps the safest place to find yourself in a villain's attack. Hard to top that for appeal. Plus, from a less professional stance, there's just no better place to see powers in action. Heroes get to just let loose and try their absolute best, knowing they'll find their equal staring them down. Some of the absolute best rivalries in SSPI history started with heroes and villains meeting on the courts, and some of the best redemption stories came from a mutual respect formed in competition. Well, listeners, I hope this has been informative. Perhaps now you can see why Morden Insurance, go Chicken Hawks, cares so deeply about their teams and why we recommend attending as many sporting events as possible. Not just because of our surprisingly extensive spending on the league, but because it's statistically the safest place to be. Thank you for listening, and from all of us at Morden Insurance, it's your insurance.